Here we are, America, day 41 of the government shutdown. I think it's fucking crooked that politicians haven't done a goddamn thing for 41 days now, yet they're still getting paid for it. And there's a bunch of government workers, who have worked straight for 41 days without a paycheck. For some reason, they're trying to prevent SNAP benefits from being dispersed to Americans at a point in history where, we may or may not see the world's first trillionaire. And ultimately, I don't think that Elon Musk can become the world's first trillionaire. He doesn't just sign a contract and get $1 trillion. It's not how that works. Elon Musk has to meet some pretty serious, numbers. Because that's the deal. He has to sell a ton of Tesla trucks and make a bunch of money. And then when he meets those goals, he can get that bonus. And me personally, I know that there's no ethical way to make $1 trillion. I know that there's no ethical way to make $1 billion even. To make that amount of money, you have to take advantage of somebody. I think it's completely fucked that, we get about 1/3 taken out of our paychecks. And these people are getting government contracts. That means taxpayer money is funding, all of these people's lifestyles. You know how fucked up it is that Elon Musk makes $8 million a day from government contracts? And one thing we never really talk about is a lot of these ultra wealthy people don't pay taxes. And if they do pay taxes, they pay very little, less than the working class. I bet if we could start taxing the churches, there'd all of a sudden be a whole lot less churches in America, wouldn't there be? I bet if we started to tax these ultra wealthy people, there probably wouldn't be so many multi-billionaires in America anymore because they'd probably just leave somewhere else. I wish more Americans could understand that we don't need money to live, for fuck's sakes. I just always think it's absolutely insane how indigenous people manage to live off of this land, not destroy it, for thousands and thousands of years until colonialization came and fucked all that up. Watermelons, fruits, vegetables, meat, it was all free back in the day. You didn't have to pay for land, you didn't have to pay for property, you didn't have to pay for a shelter. You could go out into the world and harvest these resources yourself, build your house yourself. And colonization took all of that away from us. They said, sorry, you gotta pay for that land now. Sorry, you gotta pay to hunt. Sorry, you gotta pay to fish. Sorry, you gotta pay for those groceries. Yeah, I know all these developed nations have universal health care, but you're gonna have to pay a little bit more. Costs just went up. I think Americans are so ignorant. We could all have nicer things. We could all have an easier life. And that sure is inconvenient to a lot of people's white supremacist worldview. There's a lot of these politicians from down south who are just blatantly racist. They don't give a fuck who knows it. I'm sure that's the same in any other state where it's predominantly white. I would bet Greg Gianforte, governor of Montana, racist as fuck. He's probably been sitting around laughing about how Native Americans don't have SNAP benefits and they'll finally all starve off of the reservations and they can go on that land and gobble it up. Turn it into luxury real estate for people. Go extract those resources on the reservations. This country is so frustrating. And, I keep hearing it from people. They say racism is expensive. It sure is. All the money that we could be saving and allotting to, people's needs. No, but we got to fuck them over so that we can take advantage of them while they're in a vulnerable and desperate situation so that we can make a little more money off of that. You know how fucked up that is to create a fucked up situation just so you can make money off of it? It's kind of like how they're trying to prevent SNAP benefits from going out, but grocery stores are also raising their prices. Coffee just last week was $2.19. Now it's $2.39. And for a lot of you, 39 cents doesn't really seem like a big number. But it's the principle. If they can get you comfortable with a little price raise, then they can make you comfortable with a bigger price raise later. They do it in small increments, so you guys don't freak the fuck out. I paid $2 for a cup of coffee not too long ago, and now the price rose to $2.19 for the same cup of coffee, and now this price is $2.39 for the same cup of coffee. At that point, I might as well go to Starbucks. I might as well go to a coffee shop. I went to the gas station because gas station coffee was good and cheap for me. Now I'm just thinking to myself, is there a better cup of coffee in Missoula for a comparable price? This summer I saw watermelons for $10. You know how fucking insane that is for a watermelon? And everything is just done in such a way for them to make more profit. The whole illegal immigration debacle in the United States of America is so private contractors who own detainment facilities can make a shit ton of money. They wanted to deport these people so that they could justify raising the prices for their fucking commodities. You know how much it pisses me off to go to a grocery store and you see a small salad for $5 or $6? You know how fucked up it is that a pineapple in a grocery store, pre-sliced and in a plastic container, is like $5 or $6? And you know how I know everything is just bullshit? Because a gas station I go to, they give out a free banana every day. You go get yourself a cuppa, you go get yourself a soda, and they give you a free banana. I would hope that 39 tack onto the fucking coffee isn't just charging me for the banana. Well, you could take the banana or leave the banana, but either way you're paying for it. I'm about to pass by a restaurant here in downtown Missoula, Mexican Moose. I've never been there before. And there's a lot of places here in Missoula that I'd love to go try just to see if it's any good or not, but I just can't justify paying $4, $3 for a fucking taco. Ain't no taco worth $3 or $4. And I won't blame Mexican Moose for their awful prices. I won't blame all these places downtown for these awful prices. A lot of us, we have to keep paying higher and higher prices because they keep jacking up the rent on everybody. For a lot of us, it's not an issue of supply and demand. It's just a issue of they raise the rent, and all of these places have to raise their prices so that they can pay the rent. I think a lot of people, they have to say that they're Christians so that they can convince themselves that they're good people. You're definitely not convincing me. I don't like you because the color of your skin. Real Christian like, bud. Real fucking Christian like. A lot of people out there, they teach their sons and daughters to be racist fucking pricks instead of decent human beings. And they all want to sit here and pretend like they're good Christians, and they think they want to sit here and stand on a moral soapbox and tell everyone else how worse they are. I think what's most frustrating is how they just have to simply change the language and you guys are none the wiser. They can't say white supremacy anymore. That's the no-no word. But when they say Christian nationalism, they really mean white supremacy. We're a white and Christian nation. This is what Christian nationalism is all about. A lot of us, we don't talk about the Crusades. And, we don't reflect on how what's happening in America is, reflective of the Crusades. Just a bunch of crazy, evil Christians who went around the world slaughtering people, trafficking human beings, forcing them into slave labor. Real fucking Christian-like, by the way. I'm not really sure what God Christians worship, but it's clear to me that the God that Christian people worship is evil as fuck. When you got people comparing Charlie Kirk to Jesus Christ, what the fuck did Charlie Kirk do that was anything on the level of what Jesus Christ did? White America needs to be studied. It's like, why do they glorify all of these awful fucking human beings? What happened to good whiteys like Bob Ross and Mr. fucking Rogers and Bill Nye the Science Guy? There's so many white Americans that I'm pretty sure Bill's a fucking Canadian, but There's so many other white people that you could be fucking raising up instead of these fucktards.